Well, I don't feel like I'm a part of the everyday American society, and I don't want to be, let me tell you. Okay? I do my damnedest to tear it down.
A governor's task force has determined that punk rockers are society's new subversives and must be treated as such.
Taxation is theft.
Oh! God damn it, motherfucker!
We're talking peace, love, and honor. These governments of this world are coming to an end.
The FBI is feeling the heat.
Your own conscience, your own morality, your own decision, your own self. You alone can do it. There is no authority but yourself.
The BR Hates Fed Show. Welcome to the Rice Fields, motherfuckers.
I've just realized recently that I'm starting to get, well, like today, that I've got some kind of smoker's cough starting, and it disgusts me. It's putrid. It's not even from nicotine, because I find nicotine disgusting, but it's
marijuana.
Fucking THC like pens. They're
like
poison, kids. They're so convenient.
Concentrate.
They're so convenient, but they're poison.
It's like that Chance the Rapper song where he's like, the kids are just fucking frying their brains. It's 30% THC. Compared to
We
3%.
fucking are, Chance. We really fucking are. But no, seriously, it's a nasty fucking habit, and just stick to the natural stuff, kids. But anyway, PSA aside, I am here with No More Adjectives of Instagram fame, and yeah, I've been talking a lot about going in the woods. First off, welcome to the show, man. Sorry, I'm about to go into a fucking ramble, but
that is all right. Thank you very much for having me.
And yeah, it's gonna be awesome I've been wanting to sink my teeth into this topic for a minute, and that is kind of, anarchism without adjectives, and black flag anarchy, and kind of putting aside the bullshit to actually make some progress and try and make a better world, but at least a better community. But something that really struck me recently was I posted like a picture of some kit with a Circle A patch on the back, and someone in the comments goes, "What does the Circle A mean?" And I was like, and they followed me, and I was like, fuck, I'm not really doing my job, am I? Like, it just really struck me. I was like, oh fuck. Like,
what does it mean?
Yeah, like I've just become like a photography page a little bit, and like, while I still talk about stuff like this, clearly the message wasn't getting across as much as it used to when I was doing like infographics and stuff. And I see, fortunately, like, I feel like some of the pages that have been around a little bit longer, we slack and we coast a lot. Whereas a lot of people who haven't had as hard a burnout, they're just like still really in it with providing like killer information and new ideas and probing things. And
it's fresh blood.
Compared
to I've met a lot of that in person and online.
That's something. Both of those things I want to get into, because I honestly, dude, you still strike me as having that energy. You're still very hungry for like educating. You might deny it, but
no, I get what that is. I've had a lot of people tell me that. I don't know. To me personally, it's the only thing that really matters is trying to educate at this point. Well, for years. That's why I wanted to, when I was a young lad, I'm almost done with university. When I was young, I wanted to be a professor because I wanted to teach people things, especially like history and sciences and stuff. And the more I got into academia and talked to it, the more, corrupt it got. So I was like, well, shit, how can I teach people? And I'm like, I can literally stand on a rock and yell. And now we have the internet, so I'm yelling to the whole world. So
it's much more efficient.
It is. And honestly, I've had some of the most genuine, actual intellectual conversations outside of academia, or literally standing on the bricks of a, academic courtyard versus within a classroom. We'll get into a bunch of that stuff, and I'll try to keep it as simple as I can for, a not advanced philosophical researcher, but it gets very much into sort of that post-structuralist approach. The ideas of like, you get them from like Ted Kaczynski or like Gilles Deleuze and those types in the 70s and 80s and 90s that were like, every institution is like absolutely co-opted and corrupt. Like you can do, I mean, they sell Che Guevara on a t-shirt, you know, like how did we get to this point? And I think you can go a lot of paths. I think a great book to start with that for people is Mark Fisher, and it's called Capitalist Realism. Now that's something I'm going to express like heavily in this video or podcast is let's not fucking argue the capitalist corporatist bullshit. Let's not do that. No semantics on that. Let's just talk about the system that's in place. Because I know that my page, I have both sides that like to fight every single day, because that's how, you know, the no adjective sort of approach happens. But I think before we get really into that, a good thing to start is like the question you had. What is anarchy? What is anarchy? Like the definition. What is your definition of anarchy? I think that would be a good place to start.
Well, for me, it's always been, you know, living without rulers, a society that, and there's so much you can infer, like, beyond that, you're then getting into, like, well, what is your preference? But like,
literally.
Just like, you really don't need to have this, like, you know, this tome, this brick that you can throw at someone's head to explain what is anarchy. It's like living without rulers. And for me.
This is the definition that I give for anarchy to everyone who asks. I take it from the literal translation of Greek. A or on is a Greek prefix, which means without. That's it, without. And archon, where the archy part of anarchy comes from, is a noun, and it means leader, ruler, king, magistrate. So at the end of the day, my definition of anarchy means no leader. That's it. Now, people will get very into the semantics of this as well, because mine goes to the approach of, again, the post-structuralist, very, you know, modernist philosophical ideals, almost like post-humanist, if you will. It literally means no leader. I mean, I don't want a boss. I don't want a ruler. I don't want a king. I don't want anything to tell me what to do, because I can govern myself. And theoretically, we all can too. So you get into the issues with that, which we can do later. But that's my definition, just straight up, no leaders.
Yeah.
And some people will take that and some won't. And that's where we get into the conversation about it.
Well, so. I think, and I do want to, I'll walk us back a little bit in a moment, but I think this is a good place to start before we really like get into
go deep into it.
Get into the timeline of yourself and also this whole conversation. But like,
I
want to talk about you motherfucker.
Shit, I didn't.
And before we go any deeper, I will say I appreciate the unplugged ego approach, because there is a big mix of people who are in this for ego and people who don't even consider themselves in the conversation, which, you know, it's a fine line. But anyway,
it is.
With the whole question of like defining it any further than no leaders, it's like we're talking about something that is an active, like no matter what shape it takes, it's always a boot. To put it in like layman's terms, it's always a boot on your neck. Like no matter what the system is, no matter what flags or beliefs it has, it could be this depressing, you know, like progressive hellscape where we're like bombing, you know, this neoliberal hellscape where we're bombing the whole world and claiming it's to like spread, you know, good values. And it's like it's still a fucking boot on your neck just as much as it would be if it was like Nazis or communists or the rest of it. So like,
speaking of the boot on the neck, that actually brings up a good idea, and it comes from like the insurrectionists and the nihilists of the anarchists, the, again, very post, you know, modern type vibe, is how much of the boot is, you know, the oppressor. I mean, like, what is the hell of our system? Is it the boss, or is it also the firm? You know, like, do you want to work under a fluorescent lamp for 8 hours a day, even if you don't have a boss? You know, like
I am free.
Exactly. Yeah. So it gets to that. It's literally like, well, if we saw a truly free market or a truly free world, let's not even just say market, just people operating as, you know, leaderless individuals, what would the world look like? You know, do you think humans just intuitively want to build industry? You know, like, do you think we just want to sit back and, you know, type on a computer all day? I don't think so. And, you know, you can get into a bunch of it, of stuff that's like called post-work, you know, like anti-work, pro-productive play. It's like, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
I am flirting with that these days.
Yeah, I've been flirting with that for years now. That's how I feel. And that's what I'm saying. And honestly, and this may piss off a lot of your guys, Marx had a lot of horrible ideas. He was also an incredible philosopher on the timeline. Politically or economically, he had some issues, and I agree with that. But Marx wrote of a thing of, in some of his essays, like, what would you see if the worker had his own time? You know, it actually was a critique on the Paris Commune in 1870, when the communards and anarchists and Blancovists all took over Paris, and the Versailles government was like, what the fuck is this? You know, let's go beat down on them. And for like, I think a month or two, they were infighting. They were like, what do? We like, the infrastructure here is not really like what we care about. And, you know, you had arsonists trying to burn down Notre Dame, and you had artists trying to protect it. So it's very, I actually, that's a good quote from Guy Debord, is, you know, this is what the direct incarnation of actual people and democratic talk and things are going to look like. Is this is going to be messy. It's going to be chaotic at first, and like, what do? But that's why we have sort of these ideas in place. You have the different theories, you have the different implications, you have pragmatic expressions from anarchy versus just theoretical. That's something that I wrote in one of my books, actually, and it's probably one of my favorite quotes I ever made was, theory is meant to conform to reality, not the other way around. And every theory that ever existed in anything is not reality. It's just not. It's the best we can do to a degree, and it needs to keep changing and adapting. So that's how I see a lot of that stuff. I need to talk about myself first, though, don't I? I'm so sorry, man. I just get into it.
No, I love just jumping right into it, because anyone who's perhaps, you know, I've got a lot of people lingering, I guess, who are, you know, maybe anti-government or are still going through their various phases, whatever that might look like, one way or the other. You know, the growing stage, and they come to this point where, you know, you're like, well, guess what, kid? The next thing that you're going to be looking at is anarchy, which is a pretty scary label. And
horribly.
And we can, thanks to all the fuckery that's been done to us over the years, but like, you know, we try and dress up with voluntarism or like all the rest of it. And I don't know, I really like just cutting to what anarchism is, because it's not something to be like ashamed to say you are.
No.
I'm when people ask these days, I'm fucking proud to say I'm an anarchist.
Utterly same.
Like all of the things that it stands for, I have zero fucking guilt about.
Yeah.
Like being anti-war and pro-individuality and all the rest of it. Like there is nothing that I'm like, what a bad person I am for having these beliefs. There's no those inconsistencies that so many of us, you know, had to deal with for years growing up with whatever flawed kind of politics were forced on us.
And frankly, like with anarchy, the big thing that quote unquote anarchists, and it's the issue of neoliberalism in and of itself as a system, is it's not just the cops that are cops. You have essentially turned every single person who doesn't like your action into a police officer, because they can enforce it. It's like that motto of get rid of the cop in your head, because that doesn't, just because it's not a law doesn't mean you can now go and just, you know, mess around and like tell someone else what to do and that kind of stuff. And that includes yourself. You know, you can't just be, you know, overbearing on your own ego and stuff, even though you got to keep it in check. You know, there's a lot of, you know, conceptual stuff with that. But it's actually a very scary state when you're like, well, shit, what do I really believe? And it's I think anarchy is beautiful in that is it's not a state. It's fluid. It's constantly moving and changing. And if you aren't moving with it, I mean, like a shark, it swims or drowns, you know? And that's why it's, I think, much more effective, just again, pragmatically speaking, because states, they get bogged down in bureaucracy. They get bogged down in the firm. Corporations, the same thing. State corporation is essentially the same thing. So, it's utterly the opposite of that. Like, I don't care what you call yourself. If you want to build huge centralized institutions, then, you're not really working towards anarchy. You're not really working towards changing and getting better and, fixing yourself, fixing the world. That's how I see it.
Well, before we get into that, we will get into...
have to say me. You literally have to stop talking about anarchy.
No. But we aren't entirely. I mean, so like, how long have you been kind of in this as a messenger, or better yet, how long have you been kind of, I guess, pursuing this idea of liberty, whether it was as an anarchist or kind of prior to that?
Anarchist. I've considered myself an anarchist for almost 4 years. Almost 4 years. I was a libertarian, like a right-wing libertarian for, like 2 years before that. So probably since I was like 17, I've definitely been in sort of the scene, And then I joined the military, went into the military at 18, got out at 19 because I broke my knees and they didn't want me anymore. And I was like, cool. And yeah. And no, the big change was the military for me, from libertarian to anarchist. That was the big one, because I was like, holy shit, this is bad. This is bad.
Seeing the beast nice up and close, so close you can smell its breath.
Being the beast, dude. Yeah, it's bad. It's just utterly the U.S. military is the one thing that is systematically keeping this world under lock and key. They have the most investment out of any social program on earth. It is literally the largest, like, you talk about climate change and that issues.
Oh, yeah.
They are 70% of all carbon emissions on earth. Over 115 countries. It's like combined, they contribute more. They destroy ecosystems, everything in their path. It is absolutely the number one problem is the U.S. military. That's just how I see it, having been in it. It is bad. It is bad. And it's crazy because it's like 1 million people. It's nothing. But they are doing bad things. Bad things. I mean, not even, you want to get into like torturing kids, like throwing puppies off of cliffs, fucking. Yeah, they don't do anything good, frankly.
The fucking.
Yeah.
Sorry. God.
Yeah.
So how long after, like, that's a pretty conventional route to go military and then be like, I
hate that.
Yeah, I gotta tell people to not do this at all.
Yep. No, if anyone's listening to this that thinks of joining, don't join. It's not worth it. It's the worst thing you can do in your life. It's literally the male equivalent of becoming a stripper. Please don't do it. It's bad. It's the last thing you have, and you can find something else. But yeah, no, the military utterly turned me into an anarchist. And I actually went, from right-wing libertarian to ANCAP for a long time, and then about a year and a half in, I'd say, I transferred over to agorism. And that was when everything started getting confusing. I was like, okay, what the hell? Like there is ANCOMs, and apparently they have history that's like 150 years longer. And like there's egoists, there's mutualists, there's the feminists, the transhumanists, the primitivists, the ecos. You're like, holy cow, dude, there is the nihilists, the black flag anarchy. And that's where you get into the actual conversations of like, well, which one's right, which one's wrong? How do we, I guess, standardize something that shouldn't be standardized? It's the utter argument. And frankly, as someone who wants to see unity between all of it, and I advocate, sort of like separating, but live and let live, type vibe.
Yeah.
I still understand that there's going to be issues and conflict that arises. I hope that it can go down routes that are, maybe not killing each other. That'd be kind of nice. Maybe we can discuss and figure that stuff out. But utterly, it then comes back to the individual. How angry and mean is your ANCAP right now? how angry and mean is your ANCOM when they're arguing? You know, they literally could have a civil talk, or they could kill each other. So
yeah, genuinely.
Yeah, and it just comes down to individuals. And that's, I think, just speaking on like human condition and nature, that's the big fucking issue with theoretical anarchy versus pragmatic anarchy, is humans are social creatures. They need collectives to survive. But holy shit, once one does something wrong, dude, you have enemies now. You have enemies. You literally have formed like gangs. And that's a horrible thing. And that's actually, I listened to a podcast recently about gangs, quote unquote gangs. And dude, the way that the US government labels gangs, one, they can't really. It's almost impossible, because gangs are essentially just humans cooperating, you know, but they just happen to do illegal activities. You know, some gangs don't even kill people. They literally just do like trades, drugs, you know, that stuff. Just that
do it for like neighborhood protection.
80%, yes, neighborhood protection. 80% of all people who are in a gang leave. 80%, like within a year, because they just need some money and then they don't want to be part of it anymore. So that's what I'm saying is the issue with humans is, you know, same thing happens with anarchy. You know, it's like, holy shit, we have literally just gotten into warfare, gang warfare. So it's silly, but it's a real issue that we have to address. And there's some really, really good examples. Not perfect, but anarchy is not perfect. We're always preaching it's not utopia. Don't treat it like that. There's really good examples on Earth right now of people really trying to exemplify just living free. You know, they call it anarchy, they call it communism, they call it liberation, they call it whatever. I don't care what they call it, but pragmatically, they're living ideals that, well, a lot of us agree with. And those two locations are Rojava, the Kurds in Rojava, and the Zapatitas in Mexico. They hands down right now are doing more than any other people are right now on this planet. And I think it's really quite incredible, because they aren't perfect and they have issues and things to be addressed. But at least they're trying, you know, like at least they're giving it a fair shot while I'm sitting here, you know, twiddling my thumbs, I guess. It's a one. Well, I guess it's hard to do anything here. It's the head of the world right now, the head of the neoliberal system. But, you know, it's not something we should measure metrically as anarchy. You know, I go out and do mutual aid with the ANCOMs in my local region a lot. It's quite a large thing they've actually got going. There's a few hundred people. And I think that's great, you know, getting into the community, making sure people have resources, literature, necessary things. It's quite rewarding, you know, and there's people that go training, you know, that all these pages we know, like Seaburn, and there's really good ones actually in the PNW as well. I know PNW Guerrilla, but like I can't remember his name. If I think of it, I'll tell you. But there's smaller pages, and there are a bunch of ANCOMs, and they do training too. It's I think that really, like we were saying earlier, is big changes for this world, and ways we can sort of achieve like what the Rojava and Zapatitas have built is through changing yourself. That, and this is the biggest one: abstraction and separation. Divide and conquer, baby. The U.S. is drinking that like it's going out of style, man. You look at the Zapatitas in Rojava, where they have ethnically like 70 different peoples that traditionally don't like to cooperate tons. You know why they are working together well? It's because they have almost done like what anarchists like theoretically should do. They separate into their own communes, and they trade, and they make sure resources are, you know, around, and they have their, you know, people's defense forces. So, you know, militaries and corporate forces can't just get in. But the biggest thing is they are not conceptually divided. They do not think in ideologues and ideologies. They think, all right, these are my peoples. This is my culture that is tied to my bioethnicity for thousands of years. You know, that's theirs. Live and let live. And that's something that the U.S. is horrible with right now. Horrible with. It's killing us, I think. And there's actually a good friend of mine, me and him are working on like a book, maybe more like a pamphlet, but we'll see how long it is. And we're actually thinking of an idea of trying to get rid of that abstraction and separation in America by like configuring the Rojava model, but to a market basis. So instead of, they are utterly built upon mutual aid. Peter Kropotkin, Abdullah Öcalan, communalism. They don't call themselves communists. They call it communalism, which is an idea from Öcalan. It's more libertarian socialist type thing, but they are utterly different than America is, because we are very, we're all workers, we're all working, but we are utterly focused on the, entrepreneur ethos, and they are more focused on their cultural, surviving, like the traditions, that kind of stuff. So I think it would be a good idea actually to sort of, see something like what we're calling market confederalism, where you sort of see like co-ops that almost use not a parent company, but like it would be called a parent company, but it's not owned by anyone. And it actually, this is an idea from his, I can't take the credit for this, but it sort of works as like a fail-safe. So the state is a fail-safe for corporations right now. They get bailouts and shit all the time, capital bailouts, that stuff. Well, as long as we have to use their central fiat capitalized currency, why don't we have our own fail-safes? So you have co-ops that essentially work in this confederation style, like Rojava, but they all pay like 10% of their income to this parent company, which they all equally have stock in, and they can all, delegate sort of like a council and say, well, over here, this co-op is failing. Let's give them some money. I'm not sure if it would work, but I think theoretically it's a pretty cool idea just to see happen. Because up here, where I live, there's like 6-7 co-ops, that people just make, no bosses, they just work. A lot of the times they're small enough that they don't even have to vote on anything. It's just sort of like, oh, this is working right now. If we have issues, we'll talk about it. And that's I think is one of the most beautiful things is I'm not exactly pro like this idea of direct democracy that the NCOM's like, and I'm especially not pro bosses. I hate bosses, frankly, managers too. But I do like the idea of, if you want to participate in that, who am I to stop you? But the egoists have really good ideas of what they call a union of egoists. And I myself am an egoist. And that doesn't mean like I hate you, I'm better. But it recognizes that the ego acts first, right? So like when your plane's going down, this is a great analogy, and I love this analogy. When your plane's going down, what do you do first? You put your mask on, and then you put your child's mask on. You have to satisfy your own self first before you can help the other. So I express it. I understand that you have an ego, I have an ego. Therefore, I should evaluate and, appreciate and, respect your ego as a individual, unique self. But, it's really interesting because you get into it and it's like, well, why do I love things? Because it makes me feel good. It's that love is definitely felt and shared and grasped and stuff. But what I'm saying is you can use this approach of the ego, and then every individual comes together in sort of an unofficial, organized way and goes, all right, let's lay down what we have, each different idea. And we say, okay, now instead of voting on it and saying, all right, that's the idea that the majority likes, we go, all right, how can we perhaps configure this so it satisfies all needs, Yeah. And I think that is, if anything, the utopian anarchy. That's it. That's how it should be. It's not official. The institution isn't overbearing. There is no direct democracy. There's no fucking leader. And that's just how I see that. But I've been talking way too much, man.
No. That's why you're here, man.
That's true. I guess I am on this podcast to talk about this.
Yeah. There's hours and hours and hours of me talking to myself and other people. So
yeah, I guess that's fair.
You're quite all right to take the mic. There was this the organizer of Childeberg, Jacob of Tasting Anarchy. I forget what the name of the Christians that he belongs to. It's like some kind of East Coast Christian group, I think. But whatever they are, they were like one of the pacifist kind of Christian groups.
Yeah.
But they, when they have their little communities, whenever they kind of decide on things, it's not necessarily voting. It's kind of more unanimous consent.
Yeah, and that's beautiful to me.
Yeah, because it's like, well, we're not going to put up like, you know, red button and blue button or option A and B, and then it's like, well, those are the only options. It's like,
yeah,
well, I'm not ready to agree yet to do anything, and because they're not ready to like consent to it, they, you know, it doesn't happen until the people are happy with it, because it's all the, you know, if they're all putting in money on something, or if they're all deciding to put work towards it, whatever, some kind of community thing, you know, they all have to be into it kind of fucking naturally.
And that is beautiful to me. That's utterly how I think it should work. And I understand, I really do understand the need for like, sometimes like right now, especially like being pragmatic again, you know, like actually trying to get ourselves to freedom versus, you know, arguing this till the very end. Is I understand the need for like, let's say we're working at a co-op. I'm going to refer to this a lot because that's what I work with a lot, is the...
No, I'm into it. This is exactly what I wanted to be touching on, because it's something that I think when people hear terms like mutual aid, mutualism, co-ops, or I was doing something with ANCOMs, that's setting off so many people's, you know,
they're
like
scared and they hate
right
it.
now. It's like, please abandon the tribalism and
fucking sit down and listen. Fucking listen for a second, you motherfucker. Like, they're not bad people. Frankly, they want to be free just as much in you and me, and even understand the individual very well. In fact, egoists are a form of post-left ideology. That's where the utter individual, that's where Max Stirner said, that's what Benjamin Tucker pretty much was talking about. That's what, those are the only two I can think about right now. But there's hundreds of them.
And then Agorists are left libertarians. And
The Alliance of Left Libertarians.
And I think, personally, I think it was kind of dumb to be like, oh, we're left libertarian. It's just like more of the tribalist shit, because I think so much of that stuff just needs to be like unashamedly chucked out the window, otherwise ignored on both sides of the fucking...
Literally. The political
line.
Compass is very inaccurate and does not do justice to reality. One, what you're about to get me into ideologies, which is essentially what we need to be talking about, explicit.
Chucking them out the window, more or less.
Yes, literally, because left-right dichotomy is pretty fucked. You know, I come down to it where a lot of the people I see that I work with call it left, because they see it as change. They see it as progress. They see it as getting rid of the system.
Not tradition.
Exactly. And that's what the left-right came from, was the French Revolution. The people that sat to the left were the revolutionists. And that's in the courts. That's how it worked. Where the right were the conservative, traditional monarch, that kind of thing.
So I want to pause you right there. For everyone listening, to dumb that down a little bit, that means the left was the original based people.
Yes.
So that's a little bit embarrassing. Like the left absolutely can't meme, but like fucking paragraphs of text. But I mean, that with that as the origin, with the left being the revolutionaries, I mean, you know, it kind of goes to show, and then you have the more like, you know, right-leaning libertarian idea of revolutionary that we have in the States. It's like they both accomplish the same thing of, you know, throwing the boot off their neck, and that's the thing that is the ultimate target of whatever we're talking about, and whatever preference you might have for what comes after getting said boot off your neck.
Yes, and I'll say this before I talk about ideologies. I absolutely hate every single revolution that has ever occurred. I am not a pro-revolutionary. I think that there needs to be another way. I'm a nonviolent advocate. You know, I understand. I get it. Like, I sympathize. Like, if I was a black individual that had my community policed 24/7 and then, you know, fucked with because of my skin, I understand that sentiment. And I'm not saying you do you, you know, you do you, but I'm not. And that's because every single revolution that's happened, American Revolution, now you have elitists. French Revolution, they had a shit ton of elitists. Russian Revolution, look at all those elitists. It's the problem with a power vacuum. And utterly, anyone who says they're a liberator is not a fucking liberator. They are literally going to be your next ruler. So that's why, again, I come down to, you can only change yourself. And once you change yourself, it sort of affects your community and the people around you. And then you see actual genuine change. It takes time. You got to be patient. But you'll actually see change. Like you give it 15, 20, 30 years, you'll see, oh, wow, that's actually starting to pop off and people are like, oh, I appreciate that, and, give it 5 to 6 generations and it'll be a whole new thing,
Yeah.
So the real change, it's hard to literally go to someone who doesn't want to be free and say, now you're free, because they don't want it. They don't recognize it. So you have to. It's the reason why I educate. You have to educate them first. You cannot free someone. They have to free themselves. And that's utterly what it comes down to with getting rid of the ideologies and stuff. Ideologies, I have 2 good quotes from Terence McKenna and a guy named Slavoj Zizek, who is a contemporary philosopher. Terence McKenna said that the ideology does nothing but tampers with the individual and does not actually take all of that being, that ontological being, and, embody it, because you can't. An ideology is nothing more than a group of collective thought, but that's just basically what they agree upon. Nothing else, because every individual is unique. So Slavoj Zizek made a good point that an ideology is nothing more than literally an idea until you tie an institution to it. That once you have an institution, now you have an ideology. Versus that, you're kind of just sort of brainstorming, It's sort of just thinking out loud with people that have like minds. So fucking cast aside your ideologies, literally free yourself, be an individual. That's what I really try to focus on, is people trying to recognize their own potential and act on it and be themselves, because that's how you will liberate yourself. Is, look at your food chain and say, oh, well, I'm dependent upon agriculture, which is horribly damaging to the planet and unsustainable. Maybe I can start growing stuff myself. Let's look into horticulture. Let's look into permaculture. You ever heard of a food forest, dude? Dude, food forests. Let me tell you, that's like almost zero maintenance, baby. And it's an ecosystem. So it helps rebuild the planet, If you actually get to the point of, it's sort of like Saul, Saul the Agorist. He had the book Apolitical or Apolitics, where he's trying to get away from politics. Nothing against that book. It's a great book, good collection of essays. It's still kind of focusing on politics. When you get into the anarchy of like living life, then you are apolitical. Literally get away from the theory, dog. I'm talking to someone who is a political theorist and philosopher. Get away from the theory and go outside and research things. Learn from how indigenous peoples lived? Dude, they fucking, instead of seeing yourself as a dominator, it's a very sort of, well, it's European and it's Chinese. And
you can say colonial on this show.
It's colonialism. Yes, it's colonialism. Instead of seeing yourself as a dominator of nature, and again, another stupid thing Marx said was first nature, second nature. There is no such thing. Everything is nature. Everything is nature. Now, this is where you get to the post-humanist part of it. It's not good or bad, man. It really isn't. It just happens. Nature just happens. I myself, I don't have huge moral codes. And I know that on the right, there's this whole thing of natural law. Hey, you do you. I don't see nature as that. I see it as pragmatic. Again, being practical, how it works. The reason why I see morals exist is because as social creatures, it's better to not kill each other. It's definitely much more advantageous. That's how I see it. I could be wrong, who knows? That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, hey man, we're just animals,
We are literally just animals. We are part of nature.
I really do plug into that Kaczynski stuff more than I think I intend to.
Because you should. We are literally animals.
It's like, for so long, I very much was a believer in technology and advancement and kind of, not like, I've always not believed in utopia and thought, that's kind of a silly way to describe things. Yeah. But kind of getting to a point where life is, more and more easy. And I'm like, that just isn't reality, really. Yeah. And it shouldn't be. Like, dominating the world to the point where we're just like, without need is kind of fucking terrifying.
It's horrible. And it's a very ecological realism sort of look. And there's actually good things I've been looking into recently, like bioregionalism and stuff. But we should see ourselves as symbiotic with nature. Don't let it fucking walk all over you, dog. We're not just meant to not put a footprint here. Every animal leaves a footprint in nature, but it has to be, symbiotic. It has to be sustainable. So think about it. You plant a food forest, and in Colorado, I've been doing shit tons of research on native foods and plants that help bring back stuff, or even not even native, like the dandelion. Don't pick that shit, dog. That stuff helps stuff grow everywhere. It's not even native. It's like a European plant. It is literally wanted everywhere on this earth. It is so good for everything. Dandelions are not only edible, you can make wine out of them. You can fucking eat their leaves for salad, bud. Dandelions help keep soil loose so seeds grow better. They're absolutely vital. So when you know stuff like that, imagine feeding yourself and not needing a grocery store. Like, I mean, how much control do they have over you at that point? Utterly. If you can feed yourself, you've liberated yourself. So imagine doing that with your community. Imagine building food forests everywhere, that kind of idea. That's how I see a lot of the apolitical pushing away from the ideologies, the theory, actual anarchy.
Well, yeah,
being pragmatic.
To like plug a lot of that, which to some people they will have heard that little bit and been like, God, this guy sounds like a hippie communist,
hugely.
But I mean, obviously you come from the right, funnily enough, but
yeah,
but the mentalities are so obviously compatible, because if you just plug in your prepper brain, which I'm sure most of my audience are usually plugged into, when you hear that, you shouldn't be thinking hippie. You should be thinking that's fucking
literally
clever.
Existence.
That's like that is defending your community and your kind of surroundings with food security in spite of the kind of and to plug into the Kaczynski stuff, the kind of oppressive nature of this really sterile corporate landscape where we have just lawns that don't grow anything, and
lawns, dude,
and non-fruit tree or fruit trees are cut down so they don't enable homelessness and shit like that.
Yeah, it's utterly horrible, and I
everything's decorative.
yes, decorative, and it's horrible. The lawn, let me tell you the history of the lawn. That was a 16th century French aristocrat thing to say, I don't need to grow food. It's fucking French. Fuck that. Yes, it's literally a French aristocrat way to say, I don't need to grow food on my lawn to survive. Literally. Yeah. Awful. So when you have a lawn, think about that. Think about that when you are like, oh, but I like my lawn. Fuck your lawn. Get rid of it. It's literally.
That's my takeaway.
God damn it.
That's all I have to say.
All the French philosophers were smelly,
Fucking retired G.I. Joe dad is proud of his lawn. It's fucking French, you loser. Get rid of it. Plant a victory garden. It's much more American.
This is nothing against the French. They have some great thinkers, but yes, it comes from France. And it's silly to me that, a bunch of the preppers that I've seen and studied over the years, as my family wanted to be preppers too, but they were like fucking poor. So like what I've seen is they isolate. And I think that is the exact opposite thing to do.
Yes.
And you can call me a hippie for it all you fucking want. You can say I'm left all you want. Go for it. I don't care. But you literally are a social animal. You have to cooperate to survive. So get to your community and help, dude. Literally, I actually said, I made a post about this a long time ago. Mutual aid is the most decentralized form of currency you can find. So think about that. Think about that for a fucking second. It's literally barter and trading with no thought. It's just like, oh, here you go, friend. Oh, you need that? Here you go. Because we're a community and we live. And that's, it's again, that's just theory. And we can get into, I've studied a lot of biological anthropology and sociology while at university and informally. Stratification is a thing. When you get into groups of people that are larger than like 1,000, people start to distrust, and that's why barter and trade emerges and stuff. But we can be cognizant of this. We can be cognizant, and we can see things like Rojava, where essentially they have almost no currency and mostly live through mutual aid at the community level, and then barter and trading between communes. And I think that's beautiful. And
wait, I've got a quick question. Like, have you done like a lot of study of them?
Of Rojava?
Yeah.
And they listen. They have issues. Don't get me wrong, but Yes, a lot of the stuff they do in the communes are mostly mutual aid based. Mostly.
Like I was curious, do they have anything that's like obviously not like, we just trade this as our currency, but do they have anything that's like especially common to be used? Or I don't know if you know anything like quite that specific, but
I think it depends. I don't really know, because mutual aid, the idea is supposed to be like, things are all sort of flown around to where they need to go, and people organized to do that. I know that grain and oil is huge because that's how they keep their military running. Their quote unquote military, more like a
defense force.
It's more like a fucking defense force. They essentially have no rank except for an officer that they elect, which is an issue. See, that doesn't sound cool to me. It's like, why would you do that? And then it's like, well, Turkey and Syria is literally slaughtering them. So,
well, that's something that was kind of a feature of like the American revolutionaries and like the militia was again electing their officers, and rather than being like, I think that's absolutely how it should be, because if you go out and train with a group of guys, like one of you is going to shine with their leadership skills, and you don't have to like. This is something that we probably need to get into, is kind of like the difference between rulers and leaders.
Yes, because... and I yes, I agree. And I myself, as the disgusting postmodern structuralist, I don't like them anyway. But being pragmatic and understanding that we need something to work, I think that there's a great idea called horizontal hierarchy. And it comes from the left. And again, you can hate me for this, but it's sort of like I'll give you a little kissy, bud. It's literally what we were saying with the squads and units of Rojava, but like for all sectors, right? So if we have to have institutionalized sectors because, we're still being overbeared by the regimes now, the neoliberal regime, then at least we can do it on our own terms while defending what we have. And that means, like every week you elect a manager who is good in this position. Like that's what a bunch of the co-ops do around here. Is if they can't operate, then for 1 week, they will have one guy that they have all elected to go, all right, this is what we'll do. And then he leaves. He, sequesters that position. And I think that is utterly better than you having one boss who owns everything and essentially is your little king for your work area and is always overbearing, that kind of thing. And that's what I like to see a lot of, is the horizontal hierarchy, where it's, right now we need something immediately or we're going to like fall and fail and die. So let's cooperate and talk about this and maybe vote on it now. And then later we'll get rid of it. It's again, it's not perfect, but anarchy is not perfection. So we literally just want to be free, more free. So, we can dream of like doing productive play versus working, but until we can actually do that, we have to do something else. So that's why I like the idea of, like with these co-ops, everyone has the same stake and stock and risk in the business. They all are workers there, and therefore they have the same say, they have the same go, it's all, it's more egalitarian. It's, and that's going to scare a lot of people. That word's going to scare a lot of people, especially if you're Rothbard. But I see equity as a much better form of, because you can't be equal, dude. Like some people are taller, some people jump higher, that kind of stuff. I'm against the idea of perfect equality. I'm totally for trying to be more, egalitarian with people. We're all just human, man. So in the end of the day, a lot more gets done when we cooperate instead of when someone has power and you don't. It's more of putting power back into everyone's hands versus just a few. So that's why I see that way better, But if other people want to organize the other ways, I frankly literally don't care as long as you don't enforce it upon other people. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, is the voluntary association and action. I actually separate freedom into two different categories of participation. I made a post about this a long time ago, and it's going to be in one of my books that I'm writing soon. It's first freedom is freedom of association. So you can freely associate with anarchists, and you can also freely associate with Nazis. You know, you kind of had that choice as long as they aren't the overbearing power right now. You know, like neo-Nazi groups all over the country, they're voluntarily created, dude. Like, people just get together and they go, yeah, this is what we believe. And then you have freedom of individual and individuality. So now that you have the freedom of association, how free are you as an individual within that association? You know, like the way I see it with like the bosses and the leaders and the gods and the kings and that kind of stuff. Sorry, I'm not trying to insult your gods. Anyone's god is okay. Well, you sort of now have a leader. You don't have freedom of individual, but you had freedom of association. Whereas the other one's like, oh, now you have freedom of individual and freedom of association. But you know, that's just how I see that aspect of it.
So someone kind of, it's interesting that you kind of said, you know, the two different parts of what freedom is, because like I feel like with the case of not just ANCAPs and ANCOMs, but all of the different schools of anarchist thought, and even, you know, different edging on anti-government kind of ideologies, they all are so fucking close, but it'll usually just be a few different terms, like literally different names for the same thing, where
yes,
like, you know, like a ANCAP might call, you know, the big problem just the state, and then a ANCOM would be like, oh, we have to bring down capitalism to bring down the state. They're usually talking about the same thing.
Yeah, it's like I said at the beginning, the semantics of it.
Yeah. We kill ourselves with it.
Yes. And frankly, this might be kind of against ANCAPs. I'm sorry. I really am. But I think that your ideology could use more work, and when it does, you turn into an agorist. That's how I kind of see it.
100% agree.
That's how I kind of see it. But the problem with, again, collectives and ideologies tied to institutions and people all coming together is they don't see themselves as individuals anymore. So now we have someone who's like, oh, I'm going to relinquish this power to this thing, this market, this council, this committee, this whatever, instead of the idea of, like, again, the union of egoists who understand their freedom. They have been educated to the point that they understand that, and they can actively participate to ensure they like hold that. Again, this is a fluid thing. You have to. It's, again, one of my other good quotes I have in a book that I've published is existence is resistance. That's the quote that I have. And it's really simple, but I really think when you look at nature and observe interactions between social animals, or even animals that are predator and prey, you know, it's let's say chimpanzees. It's a great example. Chimpanzees do have some hierarchy that emerges within their social groups, you know, and for the most part, it's like, he's kind of big, like he could really fuck me up, so I'm not gonna like fuck with him too much. But that doesn't mean that they really have overbearing power over like their family structures or fucking whatever, you know. They're not really monogamous, but you know what I mean. It's only when they start to try to use that power that we see chimpanzees literally fucking killing and then eating that guy, because they literally because existence is resistance. You don't want to be pushed against, and when your back is to a wall, as animals, you resist. You have to. It's like a lion. Let's use predatory now. It's like a lion and a gazelle. You know, it is totally natural for a lion to hunt a gazelle and eat it. That is a hierarchy. That is a power. But it's also utterly natural for that gazelle to fucking run and to leave and to resist and to kick and scream and do everything in its power to get away. So that's a big argument I have with ANCOMs, is they're like, hierarchy does not exist naturally. And I'm like, it explicitly does. But you know what also exists? That's ridiculous. Yes. Hierarchy exists. It does. But you know what also exists? Resistance to that hierarchy. It is just as natural. And that's why I utterly hate like sort of continental philosophy or shit like from, you know, the Enlightenment era and that stuff. It's great to build up from, but like the object and subject, like duality of it, just isn't how reality works, man. There's not left or right. It's actually called false dichotomy, man. It's not wrong just because the other thing isn't, you know?
Yeah, that's what we absolutely, so many, and I mean, probably myself and yourself coming to this school of thought and kind of tumbling through all of the hardline, explicit, you know, rule book ideologies.
It's horrible.
it's so constricting, and you're not getting the whole picture when you're saying like, no, this is the absolute, no, this is the absolute. Like, no, you're both ignoring something clearly.
Literally. And you know how hard it is to do all this and try to understand it when the best thing we have is language, which is so fucking bad, dude. Like Noam Chomsky, who is arguably an anarchist, you know.
On some days.
Unlike Tuesday, he can be an anarchist. But what he is he's a very, very, very good linguist. That's what he studied in college, and actually has a lot of grammatical, theories that are used to this day worldwide. A big thing, is it from him? I think it's from him, that he talks about is the inadequacy of language, which makes up our math, which makes up everything else, because it's got that sort of like link to reality, but it utterly just cannot capture it, because one, who knows how much fucking reality is? I won't get too far into this.
I didn't take my acid tab yet.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm not high as fuck yet. One, who knows what reality is? We're on the edges of quantum mechanics and physics, which defies general relativity in ways, but still general relativity does this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And you know how hard it is to think, well, we only exist, kind of, quote unquote, on this third dimensional time space causality scale, and all we have is some mumble bumble jumble, like monophonic sounds, literally to explain what the fuck this is. Like it's why we have so much conflict, is because he talked about, like, with grammatical and semantics, is even if we agree on like what the semantic is, what we take from that concept and theory, and we do it for all things, including mathematics and things that we think are quote unquote objective, is we take something from it that is purely individualized now. And we may agree upon it, the concept, but we may absolutely see it from different perspectives, Whereas like an engineer makes a plane, and he calculates that everyone on that plane is 150 pounds. In reality, not everyone on that plane is 150 pounds, yet it still flies. Whereas the other engineer who's working on that plane calculates what, lift and airspeed, trajectory and velocity and fucking that shit is needed for it to take off and stuff. Yet that's not always the conditions that it's in, and it still flies. So, how much can we really get into, language and this kind of stuff, especially with fucking anarchy? And
it's just the thing, like, there's so many different schools of thought with so many people who are addressing the same problem, but with like but again, it's that slightly different preference of like the root cause or what the solution is. And so many of them get wrapped up like, okay, once the state is eliminated, and then they get into their shit, and then there's like, for some reason, this conflict that like prevents us from actually getting shit done. That like we're like, whoa, your idea of what comes next is
wrong.
It's
bad compared to mine.
It's like, it's so irrelevant compared to where we're at right now.
Because there is no objective reality. Oh, well, I'm sorry, we're not going to get into that talk, but that kind of,
What did I say about the acid?
There is no objective to how we organize and operate. And I think some great books for people to read after they've done some studies. Here's how I'll say this. Read a little bit of Immanuel Kant, and then read Hegel's Science of Logic. Digest this idea of like dialectics, material dialectics, what's it called? Immanent critique. That's the theory. Then read a little bit of Marx, please, even if you hate him. I think he's kind of smart in aspects, but I do not like all that he says. Read some Marx. And then read these two motherfuckers that I love, named Gaius Deleuze and something Foucault. Utterly horrible people. Great thinkers, dude. They make you think. And Gaius Deleuze,
horrible how? Just for the
they do some bad things, man. I'm not sure if they've done it, but let's say that. But just some thought experiments that they have. It's like, dude, don't talk. It's like, stop talking. Like, please.
Oh, no, I am so concerned.
Don't talk. And that's why I'm saying you have to read and then get up to it, because if you don't, then you won't be in the right mindset. Utterly. Don't hop into these people immediately. But frankly, they are I'd say probably one of the front lines, because they operated in the 70s and they're dead now, but they're probably the front line of the idea of like getting past structuralist anarchy, like ideologies and stuff. There's great books called A Thousand Plateaus, and that talks about how everything's going to organize differently, and it's not bad or good or right or wrong or yes and no, it's just going to. And it's explained great because they call it rhizomatic learning. And if you know what a rhizome is, it's essentially like a fungus or plant roots, and it stems off from one unit and it creates a whole new unit. It's like a copy, but it's still different, And Gilles Deleuze explains that in Repetition and Difference, which is another good book anyone should read if they've gotten to the point of reading Deleuze and that kind of stuff. Frankly, those books aren't bad. Those aren't the bad ones. Some of their earlier essays that you're like, what the hell? But those books are good books. Those books utterly talk about how, like, we're all like, as a historian, that's my job. That's what I do. That's what I've studied. That's what I did at school. That's what I do now. As a historian, we all say, like, history repeats itself. I disagree. I think that history replicates. And we'll get into that dirty little semantic word, because the way that Gilles Deleuze explains it and the way that I see it is utterly, again, every single ontological individual thing is its own unique self, like we've been talking about this whole time. But it sort of still shares the same conceptual stuff, like we were just talking about with like the math and reality and stuff. So that is the difference. It's like a copy, but it's different. Like you can have a black controller or a white controller. They both do essentially the same thing, but they are different, and one may work better than the other, that kind of thing. And once you understand that, once you understand the actual importance of, like, every individual is going to learn differently, every individual is going to organize differently, every individual has their own being, even if they're somewhat similar, same with history, it's not wrong. Like people should organize differently. Frankly, it'd be a fucking boring world like it is now if everyone was doing the same thing.
Yes, that is something that cannot be overstated enough. Like, I don't know how the fuck the idea of individuality and especially different cultures is lost on so many people who think that the world solution to the state is, anarcho-communism or anarcho-capitalism.
Again, nothing against, like, some of you motherfuckers on the right, but when you say you're an individual and then try to police my thought, dude, you're not. You're just, understand individual and then embody it, dude. Don't just, talk off some other person's hot topics. Be yourself. Think it through. It's hard, but you got to do it. Otherwise, you're not really yourself. So, and people, I mean, dude, on the left, they do this too, but I seem to only argue with the people on the right that they're like, you're not an individual, dude. You're just a dirty commie. And I'm like, you just think through it a little bit.
Yeah. Like, think about what you just said too.
Just a little bit. Like, I don't care if we have different ideas and approaches. Frankly, I don't, as long as you're not bothering me. But how can you say that I'm not an individual when you're just, essentially going off a new ideologue? You're running with a new institution, if you will. The way I see it is these people will be the cops when the cops are gone. Like, there is a real danger of being policed by mole cops. Yes, forever. It's literally, when I say ACAB, that includes the motherfucker checking my receipt at Walmart. Like for real. It literally, we get rid of the cop in your head. Truly, it doesn't have to be everyone's on the same page, because it's not how reality works at all. So, I think that's all I had about that little rant. I don't think I have more.
No, it's a thing where, like, people think there is going to be only this one way of doing things, and it would be immoral to live any other way. Like, well, if there are people who, don't live with property rights, then, that they are going to be always attacking and burning us down, and, like, they're going to be savages in the wild, or the inverse, where if there's a community that still lives, like, not even necessarily like a privatized city or community,
Yeah.
but even like a
They have
more-
like
or-
gates and shit.
if we get to a place where it's I don't think it'll ever be a stateless society, and that's
No.
that's a big thing that people
Huge.
need to get an idea around. Is there will always be governments on this earth, but there might
Yep.
be way
Regions.
less government. Yeah, way less
Exactly.
government.
Like Rojava, like Zapatitas, they have they have no government that likes them. You know, there's no government essentially, and no corporations in those zones. And I say this every day, and that's why I'm an anti-revolutionist. Is they've co-opted the revolution, man. The revolution's a lie. It's not coming.
And it
this
wouldn't
is
be
the biggest-
televised.
No, and it wouldn't be fucking televised, dude. Holy shit. Like, this is the big thing that I argue with people on the left, is the idea that Marx had was dialectic materialism, that scientific socialism will come through and liberate every man, and, you know, this is just
God
how it's
help
going
us.
to go. And God help us, because that's not how it works. Not everyone's going to be on the same page. And thanks to Deleuze and thanks to Foucault, they are the ones that got that idea out of Marx. Like, no, well, what am I saying? They're the ones that basically said that's a fallacy from Marx. They said that this isn't how it works. Humans are different. And because of that, a bunch of people on the left are starting to understand that too. And that's why I see people that come from, you know, authoritarian communists, and now they're ANCOMs or even mutualists, because they're like, oh, what Marx said was wrong. There is never going to be a proletariat dictatorship, because that's just a dictatorship. You know,
Isn't it wild that, like, essentially the Biden administration and the Biden and Obama administration convinced them of that? They're like, I'm pretty unconvinced this is ever going to work out.
They're like, I'm the proletariat dictatorship, and I'm like, you're a klutz, dude. Like,
You're a fucking
if you
tanky.
fall for this, dude, you're a tanky, literally. So, no, it's the big thing of, and I thank Mikhail Buchanan for this, because he argued, he resisted Marx when they were, you know, doing their little international worker meetings, because he was like, how the fuck are you going to have liberty as you aspired for within a proletariat dictatorship, where you have now created a new elite group just out of a few workers? You know, how are you going to do that? And Marx was like, it's got to go through a period of, you know, like transition and stuff. And I'm like, and he was like, yeah, it will, but like that transition period isn't going to be the state, buddy. It most likely will be more like, oh, this is kind of chaotic right now. Let's see what we can try to wrangle together. You know?
And then you're gonna have a whole lot of powerful people, like all the sociopaths who enjoyed the revolution, being like, "Hey, I actually like being more equal than the others."
Yeah.
This is fucking sick.
Yeah. Literally, they're like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." Holodomor, what? Or Holodomor, however they say that, the Ukrainian massacre.
Oh,
fuck. Yeah.
What I've been really proud of the ANCOMs recently is seeing so many of them being like, "Fuck off, tanky," and like people treating, and this is where I mostly like would shit on Marx more, is he's essentially the most fucked up minarchist out there.
Yes, literally. He's a libertarian socialist, dog. He is a minarchist on the other side. That's what he is. And it's
like dictatorship, then freedom. What?
You just need a little bit of government, just a little bit, please. It'll be okay. And it's like, it's going to develop into literally the USSR, CCP, the regimes in, it wasn't Ethiopia, but around there. Yeah, you know, it's...
Every time someone advocates for that kind of thing, I'm like, yeah, you're just lazy, aren't you? Like, you're just unimaginative, and you got to a certain point, you're like, well, I guess we need a government for that bit, and then the freedom, of course.
Yeah,
like, way to go, genius, great idea.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Some people, and that's a big thing with it, is sort of like triaging. Like when I have educated
yes.
thousands and thousands of people in person, online, and you have to triage it. At some point, you're like, you're a lost cause, buddy. I cannot argue with you anymore about this.
As best you can, you just jam them in, and you're like, good luck.
Yeah.
If it doesn't resonate in 6 months, you're a lost cause.
Yeah. Just figure it out. You have to do it yourself. I can only give you so much, man. You know, like humans are impressionable animals. That's the way we learn. In fact, like impersonating is like a form of flattery. And if you don't even like give it a thought, buddy, then you're lost. Like for anything, if you don't look, literally, this is my as a philosopher, this is my criteria of learning. I encounter literally everything as a skeptic. I'll be like, well, oh, sorry, I just choked. I'll be like, well, let's look at this and be like, that could be wrong. Let's look at the other side of that. And then I gather empirical and rational evidence, and then I use a logical form to try to find a conclusion, right? That's sort of like the scientific method, but for philosophy. And that's essentially how most philosophers see it. If you don't encounter everything and be like, oh, I should really think about this, then you're not doing it right, frankly, in my head.
No, I think there's like two approaches to like finding what you actually believe in. And one is like the fully like, you grow the food, like treating it like a meal, and you prep it all yourself. You know exactly what's going in it. You like really take your time with the meal and you put it together, and you're like, this is what I believe. And then you've got like the microwave version where you're like, yellow and black flag, what's that about?
Yeah.
Or red and black flag, those are now my gang colors.
Literally.
And like, oh, what do I believe in? Like I hate seeing fuck Reddit, first of all, but like we've all dipped our head in there to see what's up, and it's not a good place to learn about anything. The ANCOMs and ANCAPs are straight up retarded. It's fucking painful. But let me just recover from Reddit PTSD for a second. That moment of silence to all of our fallen homies who...
Dog, I'm so sorry, but you're going to lose like hundreds of followers for this podcast, dog.
No, we regularly purge.
Yeah. Oh, God, everyone's going to be like, what do you mean you don't like my colors?
Dude, self-awareness is so important. And like literally pointing at your gang colors and being like, this is my identity now, is a microwave meal of ideology.
Literally.
It's like you really haven't processed that and thought about what you actually believe in. And I think anyone who really considers like all of their thoughts that come together are not going to be like, they're not going to really understand anarchism or like and fuck the labels, honestly, because there's plenty of people who are living the most anarchist lifestyle without ever touching any of that.
It's a fluid
autonomous
state. Yeah, it's a fluid state. You can live in it or you cannot, and that's why you cannot have a liberator, because you have to do it yourself. You have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, period, question mark, exclamation point, there's nothing else to it.
Yeah. No, that is something that I wanted to touch on. What do you think of the statement that anarchism is a relationship with like others in the world over kind of a destination or like an era?
Utterly, I agree with it. I mean, like, that's what I've sort of been, it's a journey, it's fluid. It's always going to be happening. It's never going to end. Anarchy is nature. Nature is decentralized. Nature is totally chaotic. Nature is entropy. It's going to be something that you have to keep working on till you die. And you pass it down, and other people are going to live it their ways. And literally, I just take it from the definition. The only standard that there is for anarchy is it's just no leaders. That's it. That's the only standard I will hold to someone. And, frankly, it's because I want people to rule themselves. I want people to be true individuals. I want people to live lives that they want to live, really bring out all the potential they have. You know why? Because if you have to constantly keep changing, you have to constantly keep getting better. You have to constantly keep adapting, evolving. It's like people think like, I'm definitely not anti-technology. Like I am to some things, like with Ted K, but like I don't agree with his surrogate activities, because the second a human flinted a rock into a point, now you've got technology. So if humans didn't have these huge monolithic institutions, centralized things, overbearing on them, imagine what we could fucking do, man. Imagine what we could create. Imagine what we could do if someone's just like, I have an idea, I'm
going to go and execute it today.
I'm going to do it, and nothing's going to stop me. Nothing. It's humans. All humans like to learn. This is a little thing I like to say. All humans like to learn, whether it's fucking mathematics, mechanics, or the inside of their fucking eyelids. Humans like to take in information. It's just a thing being us. And from that, we like to create, whether that creation is a cool invention that helps humanity or destroys humanity, or does nothing, frankly. like
or just a creative endeavor.
Yeah, and that's fine, because, like, dude, I don't care. Inaction is still action, and there's some things that humans are creating that are just wonderful, man, wonderful. And there's some things that have to stop, or we're gonna die. Like it'll just be the end. So it's something that we have to tie with anarchy. And I think that the big thing that I would say for what we've been talking about is, seriously, if you're an anarchist, think about your environment. Think about how you exist. Think about where you exist. Think about your food systems. Think about technology that you can use that, doesn't rely on slave labor in mines in Africa, that doesn't, rely on other horrible atrocities being committed in China, even in America. Truly think about what you're doing as a consumer, because that's not what we want to be. We don't want to be consumers. We want to be thinkers. We want to be free. And as a consumer, you're not free. You're a literal dog on a chain. So it's why I say you have to liberate yourself. And I mean that to the literal extent. With your community, figure out how to live. Figure out how to live without these institutions. Because it's not as easy as just getting rid of the government, buddy. If you will have an institution over you, you will be a slave. So that's that again, period. There's nothing more to it. So seriously, start reading stuff about native plants in your area and what to grow, food forests, how ecosystems and ecology works. Read Mutual Aid, dude. That's literally from a zoologist. Peter Kropotkin was a zoologist that observed animals, and he said, "What the fuck? Why are they cooperating?"
Kropotkin's so fucking cool. Yeah,
he's so cool.
That if you're gonna read any ANCOM, if you're gonna give one ANCOM a go, read
Peter Kropotkin.
Yep.
Mutual aid. Literally, it is utterly.
Because I think. Oh, sorry. Utterly.
I had no utter. I was just gonna say it's utterly the best. There's nothing better than that.
Like ANCAPs or Agorist or whatever, what you would call like voluntarism and stuff is essentially mutual aid, and the wider like mutual aid is a component of essentially through one, again, these fucking stupid labels that we can't agree on. It's a component of every anarchist school of thought, and even like every single kind of anti-government or liberator ideology has some form of mutual aid for it. Like if you're coming together with other humans, you just bring what you can to help get things done. That's like kind of like, as you were saying, like the natural state of humans is to do that for your community and your people. So reading mutual aid is such a, and kind of just understanding what the practice of it is such an eye-opener, whatever kind of, really whatever ideology you primarily subscribe to. Although, again, fuck your ideology.
Fuck your ideology. Truly, be an individual. But yes, I can't explain it more. Humans practice mutual aid every day. It's literally just part of being in a human group. So, like when you think of how we started, it was all mutual aid. And David Graeber, an American anthropologist who died like 2 years ago, RIP, he wrote a great book called 5,000 Years of Debt History. And mutual aid essentially comes from this idea of social credit, not as like for a credit card, get that idea out of your mind, but like, this person is a member of my community, therefore I value him, as like something that I can benefit from, but also, again, he's just a human. He has his own ego. So the social credit is created where it's like, oh, well, if I go pick the berries, then he can go hunt the thing. And we'll come and throw it in a pile in the middle and we'll eat, It's that idea of mutual aid where each person has their own thing that they can do. And it doesn't have to be structured. And that's why I like to call it productive play versus work. Work is something that you don't want to do. You know why? Because there's a fucking great quote that's not from anarchists. It's from my mom, from my grandpa, from probably your parents. They say, if you work a job that you love, it's not work. It's literally not work. When you work a job that you want to do in life, it's fun. It's fulfilling. It's something you like. It's productive playing. And imagine you can wake up in the morning and you go fucking pick some berries from your lawn and your community stuff, and you make some food and you eat, and then you go make a chair, and you fucking, at the end of the day, you're like, I'm gonna go look at the stars through this telescope and write down where they are and stuff. That's utopia. But why not think of something like that so we can at least try to work towards something like that? You know, it's something that humans are meant to do, is work together, cooperate, and try to just build better. It's all we do. It's all we do.
You know, everything you just touched on really kind of brings me to exactly how I would explain how you need, if you believe in anarchism, if you're lost in kind of what to do to achieve, you know, whatever kind of your ideal lifestyle would be, it really is about living your life, you know, living out, not
living your life,
anarchism, but living out autonomy and kind of
your life
as a lifestyle.
Literally. Albert Camus is an absurdist, and that's the position I like. And I've usually never seen any issues. Recently I have from other political contenders or philosophical contenders, but he has a great book. It's something on Sisyphus, but the great quote from it is, if you don't know Sisyphus, it's the god who was condemned to roll a rock up a hill just for it to go back down. And essentially it's like, well, what if we imagined Sisyphus happy? And it's like, how could you? How could you? He lives a horrible life. And it's like, well, don't we all? Like, isn't reality sort of like meaningless and horrible? And like, what am I doing here? And it's like, oh, then I just liberated myself because reality is meaningless. So let me do something that I want to do. Let me change something. Let me create something. Let me live life. That's something that I think most anarchists, and especially the nihilist anarchists, nothing against y'all, I love y'all, you do some good work, is you should live your life. What are you fighting for? Literally.
Yes.
Is to live your life. So at the end of the day, live it, man, as much as you can, and change to try to live it. Change.
And do it on your terms. That is praxis right there. Is making it happen your way, regardless of where you are. You know.
I made a meme that said having fun is praxis, and it's the guy skateboarding.
I fucking believe that. You know.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, we want as many people to be free as possible, but living your life, it starts with you. You know, like you said, you have to help yourself before you can help others, and you have to be able to say, you know, I'm living as authentically as I can to my beliefs, and kind of trying to minimize, you know, what I can.
Yeah,
and,
literally.
And now I'm just trying to spread that to as many of you as I can.
Yeah, and that's why I do it. That's why I haven't stopped. That's why I keep rolling with it, man. Is because this is what we should be doing.
Yeah,
so
I agree. Yeah. And you know, I think we'll definitely have to get you back on, because I think we've got some stuff to talk about with communes and intentional communities and stuff.
For sure.
But no, this has been a lot of fun, man. And yeah, we'll have to, like I said, we'll have to get you back.
Yeah, but, dude. Yeah. This was really, truly, thank you. This was really cool to do.
No, I've been meaning to do this for a long time, but finally, kind of getting on top of the interviews that I've been like, yes, we will eventually work it out. But oh my god, fucking
yeah.
I'm over like the busy part of my year, so I can finally get to the shit that I want to do now, which is cool.
That is cool.
But
that is cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, man, and thank you for really helping, I think, nail down the core of what actual anarchism is about, because so many people get it conflated with all this tribalism and just nonsense, and it's very hard to find yourself and to feel kind of you're doing something practical, I think. Yeah,
and well, thank you. I appreciate that. That you say that. Because I guess I don't know, man. I'm just trying to change things, you know. So yeah, it's cool to educate, man. I'd say it's really cool to see the fruits of your labor, because I never thought I would. When I started my journey 4 years ago, writing, publishing, talking, you know, stuff, I literally thought I would see nothing. You know, I was like, I'm gonna die and that'll be that. But yeah, no, it's really cool to see thousands and thousands of people I've interacted with over the years change and embody it. You know, it's crazy.
Some go on to be educators. Some will send you a picture of their homestead or whatever, or tell you that them and their buddy's family are like, you know, you're buying some property to build something together.
When someone sends me pictures of my books, it's like, dude, that's so cool that they're like, this is really, thank you for writing this. This is a cool book. And I'm like, I do it for y'all, you know, this is why I want to do it. And it's really, really fulfilling to see that. You know, that may sound like cocky-ish or something.
No. Like, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and why I want to start focusing on getting some books out myself is, like, we put so much time into this, and it's, you know, for some of us, it's just this unavoidable thing that we're always thinking about. Like, regardless of what hobbies and what other things we have in life, this is kind of the burning thing, that's the burning question or whatever that's always on your mind. And I know it. I know that's how it is for most people who are like really in this, and and so it's like, well, this great strain that I'm gonna be dealing with until I fucking die. There should be some product of it that maybe can help others kind of get there a little faster, or kind of ease some suffering, like, you know, joining the military or signing away their life in some way that will trouble them, you know, or whatever it might be, some way to find solace without the years of, you know, being lost or whatever. So
literally like a manufactured struggle versus a real one. You know?
It's like, dude, it doesn't have to be this way. So no, it's awesome that you're doing that, and I hope to join you on some shelves soon. But where can we find all of your stuff, man?
I have everything on my page, No More Adjectives. I think it's no_more_adjectives. I have a link tree in my bio. It has stuff I've worked on, you know, different things that have been published through, you know, different medias and my own publishings, because I like to publish some of my own stuff just myself and cut through the fucking bullshit. But
How many books have you published, like, through someone?
I've had articles and essays published through like institutions and universities and stuff. I've had two or three, and to get this, I've submitted probably over 150.
Holy fuck, they're like brutal.
They hate it. So the academic journals are owned by 6 corporations, and every time they send me a note and they say, you know, great writing, good stuff, we don't like the content. You know, so I say
the companies don't like this one.
And then that's the problem with, you know, academia. It's owned by the corporations and governments. So so that's why I publish a lot of things myself, because
fuck
fuck it, dude. Like,
gotta get it out there.
And well, it's working right now. So
I love it.
That's
all right, we'll have the links to those in the description, both to your Instagram page so people can be sure to follow you, and also to your link tree so people can go out and check out your writing and stuff. But thank you so much for coming on, man. And like I said, we'll definitely be doing this again.
Wonderful. I'm very glad. I hope we'll do it again soon, my friend.
Fuck yeah, man. All right, thanks guys for listening, and we will see you next time.